All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're letting the participants come in. I see them. Wow, quite a lot of participants piling in today. We'll give Zoom a few moments just to get its bearings. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday afternoon for discussion of AI standards. We'll be starting in just another minute. Okay. I think we might have gotten everyone in from the waiting room. So my name is David Bain. I am with INSITES, the International Committee for IT Standards, which is part of ITI here in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this busy Friday afternoon. I'd like to especially thank our panelists who have made the time to share their knowledge with us. If you want to have an impact on the future of humanity, being involved in AI standards is probably a very good place to start, and it's also a place that keeps people busy and flying around the entire world. So we're especially thankful to Wael Diab, to Elam Tabasi, and to Rohit Israni for joining us today for this. A few other housekeeping notes. Brief thank yous to some of the team members at ITI and INSITES that made this webinar possible today. We have first off Christine Reck, who is driving the bus of our Zoom webinar. We have Siobhan Davis, who's made the on-site logistics here. We have a great new INSITES sign here that she delivered. Thank you. We have who else was participating in helping set things up? Julia Moore helped with some of the desktop publishing. AJ Mahesh with social media, and last but not least, Zamalan Mukhtargal is the INSITES fellow who also helped to organize this. So what I think we'll start off with is we're still waiting for one person to join us. Elam Tabasi from NIST is not quite yet online with us. So what we'll do is we'll go to our first two panelists for discussion of AI standards. And what you should do, dear listeners and participants, this is a roundtable discussion. So write down your questions, and after the introductory remarks, we will dive right into the questions that you have about artificial intelligence standards. So let's start with Wael. Wael, I will read your bio. Yes, and as Christine points out, you can use the Q&A function to submit questions to the panelists. Wael, it's a true pleasure to have you. Thank you. I see in your background there that you are embracing the Jedi spirit that you have. You are our AI standards Jedi master. I just have to compliment you on your bio. It's really incredible, some of your experiences. I have to read this, that Wael Diab is a business and technology strategist with more than 20 years of executive experience at Fortune 500 companies in Silicon Valley. He is a worldwide all-time top prolific inventor with more than 900 patents to his name in the ICT field, and an industry-recognized expert on digital transformation. So Wael has a BS and MS degrees in EE, electrical engineering, and BA in economics from Stanford, and an MBA with honors from Wharton, a published author of the book Ethernet in the first mile, access for everyone. And he is the recipient of the David Packard Medal of Achievement and Innovator Award for his leadership in green technology. Wael has been active in standardization and related activities for 2 decades. He chairs ISO IEC JTC1 SC42, the International Standardization Committee on Artificial Intelligence, analytics and big data ecosystems. Wael has also chaired and led the development of the inaugural ISO IEC AI workshop, which you'll hear more about in a moment. And he chaired the AI track of the 22nd Global Standards Collaboration Meeting, the GSC 22. In fact, I think that's where we first met. So lastly, Wael at the Industrial Internet Consortium, IIC, Wael is the secretary of the steering committee and chairs the liaison working group, technology working group for Industrial AI Task Group. And he is also a lead author of Industrial IoT AI Framework, the IIAIF, Industrial Analytics, the Engine Driving the IoT Revolution White Paper, as well as Industrial IoT Analytic Framework, IIAF. He is a recipient of the IIC Individual Contributor Award and member of the IoT Solutions World Congress, chairing its AI forum. So I think you're checking all the boxes.
Thank you. Sorry, I should have sent you a shorter bio. I apologize.
Every bit of it is impressive, and we're so glad that amidst all of these accomplishments, you're finding the time to share. Perhaps the most relevant thing for our audience is your SC42 work, and I wonder if you might start just telling a bit about what is SC42, who is involved in it, and what are some of the key accomplishments or projects in the last year.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. By the way, just one thing is the Baby Yoda is part of my my kid's really into Legos. So now that he's very focused on Star Wars, it makes it a lot more fun. Yeah, I mean, under ISO and IEC, under the JTC1 program, SC42 was created to look at the standardization in the field of AI. And what we do is we develop horizontal deliverables in that area, which I'll talk more about in a minute. And we also work very closely with other JTC1, IEC, and ISO committees looking at the applications of AI. So something that, for those of you familiar with the lingo, we call system integration within JTC1. And, so over, your question is, what are we working on? And this past year has been a fantastic year for us. We continue to grow. The US had proposed SC42, and initially we had proposed 2 projects. So those 2 projects finally published. Those were the foundational projects. One was on terminology. The other was a framework for AI using machine learning. But at this point, we've grown quite a bit. So I believe when we started, we were somewhere between 12 and 15 countries. Now we have 50, of which 35 are participating. We generally get about 250 people to our virtual meetings. So we're growing quite a bit, and we have a very active work program. We've added about 10 projects just in the last year. And we have published quite a bit since last year. So the way we're organized is we've got a bunch of working groups, and we constantly refine the way the organization works to reflect the need of the program. But we've got a working group that looks at foundational. It is now working on a management system standard and associated projects that we could talk more about in a bit. We've got a program that's actually a working group that's originally started as big data, that's convened by Wo Chang from NIST, and that has also expanded its scope to look at data relative to AI, big data, and analytics, and has a very novel series of standards looking at data quality. We have a third working group that's has quite a few projects looking at trustworthiness. And again, what we're trying to do is not reinvent the wheel, but look at contextually for AI being a learning technology, what gaps there exist or specific for AI that we're working on. And we have a lot of collaboration there. For those of you that might be, for example, from the IEC side of the world, we're working jointly with them on a functional safety, AI for functional safety. We have a working group that looks at use cases and applications, and that published their initial use cases last year. And, we had a few, I think it was over 130. And as soon as we finished the project, we started a revision, and we've got over 60 more coming in. Looking forward, that group is going to be instrumental in enabling the applications of AI, because they're working on standards that are looking at guidelines for AI applications. And I know from within the US, we've contributed quite a bit. For example, Dr. Kwan is very active in that field. Working group 5 is looking at computational techniques. Again, it was a big year for them last year. They published an overview, and then they are about to publish a technical specification on characterization for AI algorithms. And one of the leads on that was from the US, Michael Teamy. They've also initiated some new projects, and we continue on the vein of collaborating with other committees within ISO and IEC. So we wrapped up our foundational work on governance implications of AI. This was a project that was done jointly with SC40 that published, and we have set up 2 new joint working groups. The first is on testing of AI-based systems, and it's going to get assigned a second project, hopefully soon, on verification and validation. So again, kind of backfilling that full life cycle of everything to do with AI. And last but not least, we have a new joint working group that we're setting up with ISO TC215, which is also, I believe, is the secretariat is in ANSI, and that's looking at health informatics, AI for health informatics. And so we're very excited about all that work. We've also started to structure a little bit more how we think about new work that comes in. We have an advisory group that looks at new ideas that are coming in. And one of the things we're going to be doing in the upcoming plenary is looking at how we can have a little bit more of a structure around it. What ideas are early, what ideas are more ready to be transitioned. One of the proposals that will be discussed is on AI sustainability. It's something that we've also worked with the SC39 leadership on as an initial project. So with that, perhaps there's lots more to dive into, and I'm sure Rohit and Ilham will have a lot also to add to this.
Thank you. Is there I know that you presiding over the entire global SC42, is there a project that you're most proud of, or that's most emblematic of the potential represented through this this pathway?
One of the things we're very lucky with SC42 is, honestly, we have a great team of leaders from across the world to help. First and foremost, we've got Heather Benko from ANSI, who's the committee manager. And, honestly, I don't think we could get anything done without her. So we're really thankful to have her. And then, the way we manage the workload is we really rely a lot on the what we call in JTC1, the editors in ISO and IEC, the project leads, as well as the conveners. So we're very fortunate in that sense to have a really strong group of people from across the board. So it makes my job a lot easier. In terms of, I think, projects and looking forward, I think, some of the areas that we're looking to kind of gain more momentum is more closely working with the ISO and IEC TCs in terms of the adoption of our work. And I believe, some of the foundational work, like the terminology, is key. The work on trustworthiness is key. But then as they start to really dive more into it, and obviously, the application guidance, things like the management system standards, which for a committee that's this young to actually be developing, I believe, will be quite transformative, because AI by its nature is a learning technology, and it's a little different than what people might have been used to in terms of IT. So by leveraging this management systems approach that's been very successful. I think ISO IEC 27001 is one of the more popular standards within the ISO and IEC families, and then obviously ISO 9001, to sort of help use techniques that may have existed, but bringing it all together, I believe, is going to be very exciting. Once we get that underway, we can look at how this can be extended into other domains. Other areas that are also exciting, as I mentioned, this notion of looking at data quality. There's a lot of discussion today by experts and non-experts around AI. It's a very exciting topic, but how do we make sure things are ethical and what is going on? So we've done work to help bridge between sort of what these non-technical requirements around ethics are and our program of work. And that published recently. There's more follow-on projects that are coming on. But then, once you really dig into it, how do you actually make sure that these systems really operate and stay within the parameters that you want? And this is where the data quality set of standards come into play. And for those of you that did not get a chance to see it, we had a focus on that on the workshop. The convener of that group did a really nice job going through all the different projects that we have. Sort of looking a little bit further down the line, whether it's working with healthcare or, in ISO and IEC, there's groups that are looking at smart manufacturing and how AI can be leveraged there. The ISO Smart Manufacturing Coordinating Committee recently published a paper that a number of committees in JTC1 contributed to. And that was very exciting, to be part of that digital transformation. So I think across the board, we've got lots going on. And, we have more and more projects coming in. And there's constantly more areas that are coming up, this idea of certification and allowing for auditability that will build on our MSS work is important. As I mentioned, we're looking at sustainability as well, and other areas. But it's going to be a very exciting year. So if you haven't been involved and you want to be involved, it's still a good time to join,
Thank you. Thank you so much for your important work there. And we'll come back to you in a minute to dive into further questions. Audience members, please use the Q&A function to submit your questions to this dream team of artificial intelligence standards experts. We're grateful to have them, and we're grateful to have your questions as well. So Wael, you are the chair of the whole enchilada globally, but the U.S. committee that comes to the global SC42, well, That's Insights Artificial Intelligence, the US tag to SC42. And that would be chaired by Rohit Israni. Rohit, can you join us online, please? Yes. But let me do your introduction a little bit shorter than Wael's. Rohit is currently the director of Cloud and AI Ecosystem Enabling in the Cloud and Enterprise Solutions Group at Intel. He leads inorganic initiatives and developer relations for Cloud AI. Earlier, he co-founded the Intel AI Academy and the Intel AI Builder program, chartered with bringing Intel's AI initiatives to leading universities and ISVs worldwide. He is the chair of Insights Artificial Intelligence, the US tag to SC42, but you're not in the US today. Thank you so much for burning the midnight oil and finding some way to log in with us. Can you tell us a little bit about how it is being in the US tag to SC42 and what are the drivers for the interests of companies that and American organizations that come to participate in international AI through the U.S. delegation to SC42.
Sure. Thank you, David, for the introduction and for inviting me to this panel. I've been a part of INSIT's AI and SC42 right through its foundation. And essentially, the program of work and the initiative for having standardization in AI was driven by the US, and we had a steering committee comprising several companies which had the foresight to see that this would be a need that'll occur. And there was this was still early days in terms of standardization. AI had certainly taken off, but a few companies formed a steering committee, and then we had SC42. And I was initially the vice chair of INSIT's AI, and then with the chair at that point who resigned after a year, I have been chair for the last 3 years of INSIT's AI. And if you go to see the reason why standardization of AI is very important, and companies and INSIT's AI does have representation from all the major corporates involved in AI development in the US, or at least most of them. And the reason being, AI has got, you can divide the issues that people discuss in AI, and both of them are equally important as both real issues. There are real challenges of AI, which policymakers, regulators, and folks involved in standardization have to really take into account as they build platform technologies that span segments and have interaction both between consumers and businesses at a very large scale and utilize large amount of data. So there are some real issues that need to be tackled, like bias and ethics. There is also a set of what you can think of as perceived challenges, which are also important. Consumers also hear things about AI and machines going rogue and robots going rogue, and news that really comes about. So it's both real and perceived issues. And standards is a way of creating trust. It's a way of creating a common system that companies adhere to. So it creates trust between consumers, users of technology, and helps policymakers and governments make sure technology and its development is not hindered, but yet the issues, particularly the real issues, are effectively addressed responsibly by corporates. And that's the reason why a lot of US companies really had the foresight to push for AI standardization through INSITs, and then we are participating very actively as well. The program of work that Wael just described, all of it is very relevant to the US. Right from the foundational set of standards and defining the terms, to dealing with the very large challenges that require many minds from the globe thinking and coming to a common set of understanding around risks and ethics. All of that is foundational to success of AI. And most US companies are international in nature, particularly the ones developing far-reaching AI technologies. And so participation in international standards, which creates a common understanding with input across the globe, is even more valuable.
Yeah, I hear the concern from many about ethics, and I'm so glad that you and Wael are impacting that through the management and certification layer. I think it's definitely a key for humanity to have its cake and eat it too, to be able to use AI in a way that is safe and also that engenders trust among people who are making use of it in smart cities and everywhere. But let's talk a little bit about your view, Rohit, on fragmentation of standards, how the challenge of divergent standards and how is this an issue that's coming up within SC42, and how are you addressing it? How do you bridge the gap and align so that other we don't end up in the world with many disparate standards and conflicting frameworks and terminologies with respect to AI.
David, you bring up a really important point, which I certainly think is among the greatest challenges that exist today in AI standardization. As I mentioned, there is a need for AI. There are two elements that are involved in what I consider as fragmentation that's taking place across the globe. There has been an interest from countries, and fairly so, where AI is viewed as the next generation, next 20, 30, 40 years driver of economic gains. So a lot of companies want to establish leadership positions in AI. And there is also, that's a factor in which several countries and several regions have AI standardization initiatives of their own, both for their markets and as a way to be leaders in AI. So that's one driving factor that many countries, like from Europe, having a set of standards in AI and PRC in different parts of the world, where you see this international fragmentation, so to say. And there is a similar kind of dynamic within SDOs where, various organizations are concerned about similar problems and often have similar approaches, but are also having extensive efforts around AI standardization. So this is certainly one of the challenges that does exist, because as companies trading internationally, you don't want to have your products having to adhere to a certain set of standards in one part of the world and then have completely different set of standards in another part of the world. The common kind of understanding and what the standards should be is extremely valuable, especially for international companies. So I think international standards certainly are the way, perhaps, where this could be harmonized. And it's to the credit of Weil, I must say, we're having a chair who's been very proactive in addressing this issue right from the beginning, right? So Weil has established liaisons with several of these entities, right, that are involved in it. And as a result of that proactive push, SC42 is emerging as kind of a standard platform, and various countries, various SDOs are looking for that leadership from SC42. And with these liaison arrangements, we are trying to harmonize and learning from each other's work and kind of put together what would be like a common international standard for AI. So the issue and the challenge is growing, and it's hard, but certainly the leaders of SC42 are doing their bit to make this more harmonized.
Yeah, for sure. SDOs globally comprise a messy Venn diagram, the way that they overlap, and for a field dedicated to standardization, it's a remarkably chaotic sort of situation. However, as you point out, through your work and Wael's and others, I think JTC1 is a unique place, is a unique opportunity to harmonize that by its procedures and its culture and the welcoming people that are participating from every country. There is a great opportunity for harmonization through this junction box of standards, in not just in 42, but in so many other areas. So let's introduce our last guest. And by the way, if you have questions for one another, please write them down, and we'll welcome the questions of the panelists to one another, in addition to the questions of folks who are participating online. Elam, thank you so much for being with us today. Let me read your short introduction here. You are the Chief of Staff in the Information Technology Laboratory, the ITL, at NIST. NIST being one of the most important government agencies of the many agencies that participate in Insights. We are so proud of the participation of NIST and the Interagency Committee for Standards Policy that you lead. And we're so glad to have you. You lead the NIST Trustworthy and Responsible AI program that aims to cultivate trust in the design, development, and use of AI technologies by improving measurement science, standards, and related tools in ways that enhance economic security and improve quality of life. You have been working on various machine learning and computer vision projects with applications in biometrics evaluation and standards since you joined NIST in 1999. And you are also a member of the National AI Research Task Force, a senior member of IEE, IEEE, and a fellow of the Washington Academy of Sciences. Thank you so much for joining us. I wonder maybe you could start off by saying a few words about the AI risk management framework that NIST is developing.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you for having me here. Glad to be here and talk about the work that we're doing. Thanks for the nice words about NIST, but a very quick introduction of NIST, that as the federal laboratory with a mission focused on driving U.S. innovation and economic competitiveness, NIST plays a central role in advancing critical and emerging technology, from AI to quantum to cybersecurity and biometrics that you mentioned, and participates in standard development activities within ISO in different subcommittees for those areas. NIST has a long standing tradition for cultivating trust in technology. We do that by advancing measurement science and participating in standard developments, measurement science and standards that make technology more robust, more secure, more private, and altogether more trustworthy. And the word trust has been mentioned here, and that's exactly what we're doing in the area of the AI at NIST. Our program encompasses from foundational research to applied research to evaluations, but the activity that I want to talk about, and I think it's also very related to many of the standard activity mentioned here, is development of the AI risk management framework. First and foremost, as we were working towards understanding trustworthy AI, and maybe we would have put guidance on the trustworthy framework, but Congress gave us this mandate to develop AI risk management framework. It was part of the National AI Act of 2020, and it gives us a timeline of having the framework done by January 2023. Like any other things that we do at NIST, we launched an open, transparent, collaborative process to develop a voluntary framework. So as you all know, NIST is a non-regulatory. This framework, like many other frameworks that NIST develop, is going to be a voluntary framework. The approach that we are taking, building on what we heard from Rohit about trustworthy responsible technology, it's a rights preserving approach, and it aims to operationalize values identified in many of the high level documents, such as the OECD AI recommendation or executive order that came out about advancing trustworthy responsible use of artificial intelligence. And it's really important, again, just echoing the point that was made so far, that cultivating trust by understanding and managing risks of AI systems is important, because it helps preserve civil liberty and rights and enhance the safety, while also create opportunities for innovations. And we need all of those to realize the full potential of AI technologies. Another thing about AI RMF is that it also takes a socio-technical, AI systems are socio-technical in nature, so it focuses on the socio-technical characteristics that the AI system needs to have to be trustworthy. So if we, our task that was given to us was development of AI risk management framework, and as it was discussed before me, some of these topics are new. So the first thing that we needed to do is to figure out what's the taxonomy of risks, or if you're talking about trustworthy responsible AI, what are those characteristics? So as I mentioned, we started a very collaborative process. The process started with a request for information, rounds of public drafts and workshops. The comment period on the third draft closed last night, midnight, and the third workshop is going to be on October. Many of you on SC42 had participated in our workshops, and we will continue those conversations. But a little bit about the content of the AI-RMF. I mentioned that the first thing that we needed to do is getting some of these terms and definitions cleared. So if it's a risk management, we have to define risk. What is risk? What is risk management? Again, lucky for us and the whole community, there are some good ISO documents out there, 31,000. And so we went back to them, and we made this as one of the goals from the get-go, that we want to leverage the things that has been done and be aligned with the work that has been done, and engage the community to get to bring all of them and all of these different documents to the extent possible harmonized, aligned. That also a very good point that Rohit brought up about fragmentation. So the content talks about, there's a section that talks about the risk and risk management and risk tolerance. There's a section that talk about characteristics of the trustworthiness. And then the core of the document provides guidance and recommendations for risk management. If you are familiar with the cybersecurity or privacy frameworks that NIST has to put out, same structure of having functions that are comprised of categories and subcategories to provide granular recommendations. The functions that we adopted or used, again, all of this has been done by input from the whole stakeholders, are map, measure, manage, and govern. So the map function provides recommendations for identifying risks, identifying context and risks based on those taxonomy of risk that has defined. Measure provides recommendation and guidance on quantitatively or qualitatively measure those risks, and manage based on those inputs, come up with how the risk needs to be treated. The govern function is also maybe the most important function there, that that talks about roles and responsibilities, rules and procedures, a lot of things. These four functions also, I think in the concept paper that we put out, we did a one-to-one mapping to ISO 31,000. And we will do that again when the document is finalized. In the discussions of the characteristics of the trustworthiness, components such as validity and reliability, bias, security, privacy. ISO document came out recently, I think early August, terminology and vocabulary out of the working group one, I believe, SC42. So we used as many as the document terminology that was related. What I'm trying to say is really, we are not trying to reinvent the wheel. And one of the things that we have in front of ourselves is to align the AI-RMF with the standard that I believe both Rohit and Wael mentioned on trustworthy AI. So where we are with the AI-RMF is that it's the third public comment closed. We are analyzing the comments. We have a workshop in October, and we will be on track to release the version 1.0 in January. What we are trying to do really with this, and one of the messaging that we are sending is the AI-RMF is voluntary, it's not a checklist. And we don't want it to be treated as a checklist. Again, going back to the importance of the govern function, we really want to cultivate a culture of risk understanding and risk communications and risk management. So its adoption should be really based on the value it provides, and the value that it provides should really be getting everybody thinking about the risks of the AI, the trustworthy and responsible use of AI. Accuracy is really important, but it should also be balanced with associated risk to that. We want the system to be functional, valid and reliable. At the same time, we want to make sure that it is secure and resilient, it is privacy enhanced, it's safe, it is bias mitigated, it's explainable and interpretable, and most importantly, it's also transparent and transparency and accountability. So that's the AI-RMF. It's trying to give granular recommendations and guidance on how to do the risk management for AI. It is a sector agnostic. Well talked about horizontal, but we have calls for developing AI-RMF profile, instantiation of AI-RMF for particular sectors, and yeah, a lot more work to be done. Just putting it out is just a first step, and a lot more working with standard development organizations, including ANSI and ISO, is important to bring the whole community on a shared understanding of what is AI risks, how to manage them, all with the goal of maximizing the benefits of the AI technology, minimizing the risks, because AI has a tremendous opportunity for improving lives, and do it in a way that's flexible, structured, pro-innovation, and measured. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that information and for the important work that you're doing around the RMF. It's great to hear that you are not reinventing the wheel, and you're leveraging the terminology and other work that's being done in the committees, and that it sounds like you're making a great have a great project that's coming to fruition. In your discussion of the risk taxonomy, I'm wondering what is the, as this is a challenge throughout technology, information technology, especially standards, is keeping things current. Things change so quickly in artificial intelligence mediated social media interactions. For instance, the concerns have evolved as the AI is being used not just for regular media, but also for short form video, the AI mediated interaction. And so what I'm trying to say is that it's a sort of a moving target. It's an evolving and a dynamic risk taxonomy. And for your work, what are the mechanisms or the periodicity of revisiting and updating? Are you referencing standards? Is it just through the community, or is it the revision cycle that's planned in the future? What is NIST's plan for after this comes to life and is released? What is the plan for maintaining its vitality?
Yeah, excellent questions. And yes, it's I'm sure a lot of people in the room and all of the panelists agree that writing standards for technology that's moving and updating is very difficult. In terms of the AI-RMF, so one thing that I should have mentioned is that the framework itself, again, by design, is high-level guidance. And we understood, from the experience of the other frameworks, that more guidance is needed, more explanation is needed. So we put out a AI-RMF playbook that provides a bit more, verbose information and points to many different informative references. And the reason that I mentioned that is that playbook is going to be a living document. So it's going to be, we will receive, we are open to receive updates and comments on that on a regular, anytime. But we will update it every 6 months. And the AI-RMF by itself, I think we put it in the first couple of pages of the second draft that was out. So we have thinking of a revision cycle, and I think we put 3 years and asked should it be 5 years, or we put 5 years and ask about 3 years. But yes, we agree that it should be revised. So we have the base document, if you want to say, your core document, the AI-RMF that stays a bit longer to kind of be stable, and then we have the playbook that it's the plan is to be to keep it updated on a very fast pace. And then the AI-RMF profiles, it's going to be a longer discussion. So that's the schedule that we put for a comment and input from the community to see if that's enough, if that's what they want. And of course, the research should be continued, and And a lot more needs to be done with AI/RMF, right? We just try to get some of these important foundations of trustworthy, what we mean by trust, what constitutes trust, what trustworthy is, what the function should be, and get, trying to set up the governance. But a lot about measurement, how to measure bias, how to measure explainability, what are the techniques for privacy enhancing technologies. These are all rather research topics. And then there are a lot of other, for example, more practical matters that AI/RMF introduces a very wide range of audiences. How to try to basically get more granularity on the value chain there, that what's the role and responsibility of each of them. I'm saying all of these things to say where the content should be revised regularly. We should also have a list of the things that we should do to make the AI/RMF more useful and more solid in terms of content. And that also all be part of the discussions, maybe at the workshop, but definitely in January when the draft is released. And of course, on the top of the list is also alignment with the international standards and international frameworks. The draft already has a table that does the crosswalk between the trustworthy characteristics introduced in AI/RMF with documents such as EU AI Act and the executive order that I mentioned. So we have started that discussions, and there are already a lot of other suggestions on a crosswalk to other documents, and we will definitely be more clear about the parts that we have aligned with the ISO documents. We have to figure out how to do this as a part of footnote or appendix or a table, but the alignment and updates is really important.
And I'm sure difficult and detailed. It doesn't sound quite as straightforward as taking bills from the House of Representatives and the Senate and having the combined version or the version that captures the essence of from both sides of Congress. Where do you see the big differences or disconnects between your work and other visions of AI standards?
I don't see, so in terms of the differences, so what you said about the point of trying to do the mapping, and it can be difficult, I agree with that. And I think this is what I'm keeping saying in the past few days, that in the very short term, it would be good to get alignment on semantics, right? Alignment on the context. We don't need to force everybody to use the same term or not. And we can keep the debate about, is it the right term or is it about word to express that concept, as long as we agree that, okay, this is what we mean by bias. For example, we put a document out in March that talks about bias is not only about computational and statistical bias, but human and systemic biases also is really important. Getting the community thinking about, it's not us getting the community thinking about it, but working with the community to bring those type of shared understanding. Another term that, again, a lot of debates on that, explainability versus interpretability versus transparency. The different documents use them differently. So I wouldn't say that in the context, in the objective and purpose, we are, let me just talk about the trustworthy characteristics. We are that far. Of course, we have to keep the discussion going on, and terms such as, well, there are other terms also being identified, but you don't, how those things relate to, or are they can be defined as part of the or as some of the characteristics there. But in terms of the approach, again, I think everybody agrees that the risk-based approach is a powerful approach, and it's a powerful way of talking about getting to trustworthy and responsible AI. But there are different approaches in the risk-based approach. So the AI/RMF provides a voluntary. Again, we don't want it to be checklist, and we think that there is the voluntary nature is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing because it makes people think about it, that what they really want to, what's their risk posture, what they can do and what they cannot do. Talking about that culture of risk understanding and risk communications versus more regulatory approach that we're seeing coming out of the EU. So the bigger differences, I think, is in that category in terms of the what we mean by trustworthy and how to measure them. There are differences, but I think more research and more discussions can bring a good bit of alignment on the concepts, and we can worry about is it the right term or not. But as long as we have those mapping and crosswalks, so we know what we're talking about, I'm hopeful that would be a big step forward.
And last question before we, Wael, would you like to interject something?
Yeah, actually, just something that both like Ilham mentioned and Rohit talked about is, which, coming from being in technology for 20 years, something that's very unique here is, Ilham talked about like how, people may use different words for the same thing. Rohit talked about different stakeholders. Something, if people are watching this and are not necessarily like working in AI, this is not the sort of usual way that things have been done. Traditionally, we've kind of built technology and then worried later about what the implications are, right? But here, I mean, you've got this really novel approach where upfront, we're dealing with topics from trustworthiness to risk. And what we're seeing is very, very different sets of stakeholders come in. I think Rohit touched, on some of the organizations that we're working with. I mean, we recently had UNESCO come in and talk about AI at our plenary, right? And Ilham's talking about like the regulatory approach. We have people that are coming out of academia. I just think it's worth just sort of as we talk about the AI standardization, just taking a look and just seeing how a very different set of stakeholders are coming in. And by the way, it's I see something similar also happening in education systems, right? It's, if you look at, some of the schools that are teaching AI now, it's not purely just the technical side. There's the ethical side, there's the social aspect. And I think it's a great opportunity in terms of standardization to encompass, more about the context of use of the technology itself, right? I think this is, what we're doing here, I think is going to play out in future technologies to come. Thanks.
Sounds good. Well, Wael, Rohit, would you maybe join us and we'll start to take some of the questions that are here. We're down to our last 30 minutes approximately. So let's, if you would join us, we'll start to address some of the questions. Well, Wael, while you are at it, could you share something about this, the document that you wanted to share about
the workshop?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I don't know if Christine can put up the slide, but actually both Ilham and Rohit were involved in the inaugural one. So what we are trying to do is, if you go to the second slide, please. What we're trying to do is basically have a conversation about AI, right? And there's sort of maybe at a very high level, 3 objectives to be holding these workshops. Number one, it's sort of to kind of get the word out about, what we're doing, and especially for application areas or people that are looking to use these standards in their domain, what we're about. The second is to sort of identify emerging trends and that are happening. And the third is to see what gaps in our standardization exist. So we held the first workshop. We're doing these twice a year. By the way, Rohit is on the program committee and has been great at bringing in different stakeholders, not just within the ISO and IC community, but for example, we had some innovation leaders come in and talk to us last time. And Ilham gave a really, in-depth talk about the risk framework they're working on. So for November, what we've got is we've again got 4 tracks, very similar to the original one. On the AI application side, we're going to have a healthcare roundtable. So there's been lots of discussions about how AI can be used in healthcare. As I mentioned, SC42 and working with TC215 has an initial project, but there's interest beyond just that. So we're going to bring in some people that are from, these AI, these healthcare TCs and ISO and IEC, and folks that are from, AI, and hopefully have a conversation. A second track is on beneficial AI. So we are hearing a lot about how to make sure that it's, we make sure that we have responsible, trustworthy adoption. But, there also a theme that came out of the initial one was, how AI can be helpful. There's almost, one can ask at some point, it may be unethical not to use AI. So if you could have used AI and saved, even one life with COVID, would you not have some obligation to do it? And we saw quite a few use cases that way. The System Committee on Assisted Active Living was a good example. I think Rohit gave an example of a startup that was looking to help paraplegics. And the presentation from AAL, I mean, the professor that did it said, basically without AI, they just simply could not do what they can. So that's looking at it. And by the way, there's one of the emerging efforts in Working Group 4 and SC42 is to sort of look at beneficial AI. So when Working Group 4 started to look at use cases, they were asking, the ethical questions of what is your ethical concern, and including that in a use case, which had not been done before, as far as I'm aware, in the standards world. So now, let's look at the other side of the coin. The third one is to look at the novel standardization approaches. So as I mentioned, in the inaugural one, we had a number of presentations on the emerging standards that we are published. And we're also opening this up to have, someone has a vertical approach for AI that they would like to talk about. This would be there. We expect as, time progresses to have more of a mix, or more of the vertical domains present here as well. And then last but not least, this idea on emerging trends and requirements. So the last time we did this, we had an entire session on this topic. We had someone that presented from the consumer side. And, it was nice to hear, that they're thinking about this. And it was very nice to hear that the stuff we were doing was as applicable to consumer as to enterprise. We had someone from UNESCO, as I mentioned. So we'll have more on the requirements side, but and then we'll complement with on the emerging technology trends. And hopefully this will help bring these insights back into SC42 to refine the work program. So we're very excited about this. If you look at the last page, and we'll post this because the link is a bit thing. So they're actually this go around. These are all taped. If you go to the landing page, you can find all the materials from the first workshop and the videos and presentations. And you can register for the upcoming workshop. It's free. And we look forward to having you. And I think this one, the live actual workshop is in US friendly time. We're going to go through what we're calling a heavier rotation. So we have to anchor it in one time zone and so on. So anyway, I don't know if Rohit, you or had anything to add from the program committee side.
No, I think you captured it well. And, this time one difference is that we have this emphasis on the beneficial AI applications. There was a lot of interest in the last discussion we had. So we have a track on that in this discussion.
Is there a way we can share this document to people through a link to the document, or in via email, if people want to have a copy of that?
Absolutely. From our side, it would be great to share it. So anything we can do to help would be great.
Because one of the questions is about the availability of documents that capture the relevant ISO ISO JTC1 standards, ISO IEC JTC1 standards mentioned. I don't know, are the standards or draft standards available for people to view, or are they things that have to be purchased? I know there are quite a lot of informative documents readily available. The standards are not always free.
So my understanding, and I'm sure there's a bunch of people from Insights on here that would know the answer better than me, but I believe you need to be a member in general to be to get access to the documents. So you'd want to join Insights AI. And as far as like the documents being available, there is a process to request that some documents, when they're published, are made freely available, but most of the standards are sold through ISO or IEC or the national bodies. However, for the purposes of the workshop, everything is freely available, and what you will see is the presentations that are done. For example, I think Mike did one on TS 4213 that's coming out. So that presentation is available. The talk is available. Yeah, so anyone that presents on the workshops, that we keep a recording of it. And I believe the plan for ISO and IEC, it's they are still in the works, but they're going to go back to that original raw content and then create more targeted content for, like here's something on applications, here's something on requirements for trustworthy AI. So they'll be reaching out to the authors. It's just taking a little bit of time. I guess we're getting more speakers than we're doing the speakers in the workshops quicker than they can process the post marketing.
Yes. And I hear you about the documents. To have access to the working documents, naturally you need to be part of the team developing it, and also about published documents. There's a established way that those are shared with the world. One document that we can definitely share, the parent organization of Insights is ITI. It released recently some guidance on global AI policy recommendations, and I'm sharing in the chat a link to that PDF, and maybe we can share the link to your PDF as well. I don't know if you can see that or not. Here's another question about risk taxonomy that reminds me of one of the things that you were just talking about, Wael, and maybe you can all comment on this. To what extent does your risk taxonomy take into consideration and quantify the risk of delay of artificial intelligence? Is that I suppose the poster child, the emblematic use case is autonomous driving. Not having autonomous driving comes at a cost of 30,000 or so lives per year. Is this part of the rubric of risk?
If I understood the question correctly, it's there's even a sentence in AI RMF that says that risk management of the AI is as much about maximizing benefits as it's minimizing its risk. So it is really a cost-benefit analysis, and exactly as you said, sometimes the risk is not having the technology, and sometimes the risk is actually having this. So it's what we're trying to do as part of the AI RMF is giving a flexible, structured, but yet measured process to go through understanding, mapping, measuring, and managing risk. And so if you look at, as I said, each of these functions that I mentioned, map, measure, manage, and govern, are broken out into categories and subcategories. And when it's talking about identifying risk, it also talks about identifying benefits. So the importance of cost-benefit analysis, and it's all about maximizing benefits, minimizing risk. Otherwise, we have minimized the risk by not doing anything, but that's also missing many opportunities.
Thanks, Ellen.
Perhaps I'd add one thing to what Ilham said is, and in many ways, the AI thing is happening. I mean, if you look at most analysts, I mean, it's not like this is something that's coming, it's something that's there. Perhaps, this is not, the topic, it's not about, having the Terminator 7 movie. This is about, how you could get better, deeper insights and better analytics. A lot of these systems are semi-autonomous. And I think the work here that, at least, from on the 42 side that's happening, is all about making sure that we have responsible adoption. So it's not about slowing it down. It's about, as these systems get deployed, that people think about this. And, that it may, someone, the word risk, like, why should I, why are you using risk? Well, it's a learning system. And like anything else, right, they're different depending on the vertical. There will be different constraints that need to be jointly developed, right? But again, the idea is not to slow anything down. It's to make sure that as we do it, we keep our eye on the ball, right? I mean, very simple things is, you can deploy the system, get a tremendous amount of efficiencies, in, let's say, a financial system that you're looking at. But at the same time, a human being would know not to look at certain data and base their decisions on, like, for example, race, right? A computer may not. And, that is something that, when we talk about, bias and ethics and how to make sure that the system stays within the parameters that it's running, that's what this is all about. So it really is about actually making system, responsible, broad adoption.
Sounds good. When I mentioned this ITI document, I neglected to mention that it's the hard work. This was a result of the hard work of my colleagues, John Miller and Courtney Lang. So I've tried to paste this into the chat in case anybody would like to read that.
And if I may, I just want to also give out, I said that we have engaged a very broad range of stakeholders from industry to academia to civil liberties to international partners. But you brought up that paper. I just want to also give a shout out to ITI for all of their support of the AIRMF.
Thank you, Ilham. So Ricardo Llera invites us to dive into the work in the area of sustainable AI. At the Mobile World Congress that recently, I think it's still taking place in Las Vegas right now, they in the opening keynote, they mentioned that 5G will be responsible for eliminating 20% of the USA's carbon commitment to greenhouse gas reduction. And said, well, 5G is going to do that. How is 5G going to do that? Well, it turns out that a lot of that is coming from the use of artificial intelligence as enabled on the edge by 5G. So clearly, artificial intelligence has a central role in many areas to play with sustainability. I wonder if any of you could flesh that out a little bit for us. How is artificial intelligence addressing the sustainability need, and are you liaisoning with JTC1 SC39 around sustainable data centers and IT sustainability, for instance?
Sure, I could take a stab at it. So actually, I see Bill Ash is on, who's the committee manager for SC39. So we've had an action item. Well, actually, our collaboration goes even further back, back to before 42, when we just had big data, and we've been talking to them. Most recently, there was an action assigned to SC39 and 42 as part of an SMB resolution to look at sustainability. And we've had an idea being fleshed out in one of our advisory groups. And we did speak to SC39. And so we have a proposal, I believe, for a technical report that's coming up in the plenary. So we'll discuss that there. But I believe in the initial informal discussions we've had with both groups is what we'd like to see. Okay, now that we need something to get started, and now that we've got AI, right, We have a lot of existing things that SC39 has established and metrics that are there that could be reused to identify sort of what the novel area is and what some of the approaches that we might take. But I'm a little hesitant to talk more because it is something that's on our agenda to discuss, and until it's approved, it's just an idea. But I believe there's a lot of interest there. We also see the interest coming in from other stakeholders that we liaise with as well.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment on sustainability?
I can. I don't have a comment to say what needs to be done, but I would just want to say that it was brought up as part of the comments that we received in the previous drafts of the AI-RMF, and we made some adjustment in the text to include that. But that by itself could be AI-RMF profile, right? I think it was mentioned several times here, AI is all about context. So you have to understand context and do the risk management, tailor those guidance for specific use case. So it's very important, and I think that could be a profile for AI-RMF, and we'll be happy to work with the new committees on that.
Okay. All right, other questions?
Perhaps also another thought is on the beneficial side, which is I think where you were leading into as well, right? So there's the, making sure that whatever we do with AI, it's very data intensive, it's compute intensive. But on the beneficial side, as we kind of dig into, these use cases, I mean, generally speaking, you're not going to do something if there's no sort of return, right? But some of these use cases that we're looking at as beneficial AI may have a big societal impact. So for instance, it may not immediately be apparent, but if you use an AI system to help govern your traffic flow in a city, right? That may have despite the fact that it's data intensive and compute intensive, you may be saving lots of carbon emissions on the street, right? And so, one of the things as we dig into beneficial AI itself, right, there may be more sustainability there that currently is not perhaps labeled that way, right? Just if you're able to run a factory more efficiently, right? If you look at predictive maintenance enabled by AI, right? If you're able to get more out of your existing resources, whether it's something for transportation, it's a plant, right? Again, you're reducing waste, and therefore, you're being sustainable. So it is quite a big thing. I know also there's the UN SDGs that a lot of us are trying to look at as we approve new projects. So I think within the sort of broader vein of sustainability, there's a lot that AI has to offer, of course, in conjunction with other domains that that we would work with.
Very good. Talking about the SDGs, the International Telecommunication Union got a new slate of leaders yesterday at their Plenipot over in, I guess it was in Hungary. Was it in Hungary? Anyway, the question is there, do you anticipate, renewed opportunities to align with the ITU around some of these AI for good sort of initiatives? Do you see greater interaction and collaboration even with the ITU in the coming term?
I mean, I guess I can answer that. I mean, we're not involved in, who ITU picks for their leadership. But as far as like our committee, I mean, we have a liaison agreement in place with ITU, and we, exchange documents with them and we collaborate. I think one of the things that's very important is to make sure that there's no duplication of work, right? So, for instance, we just published our terminology document. It would be great, if that gets used. We also have we've had a healthy collaboration where they've been providing, I believe it's the focus group on healthcare. They've been providing use cases to SC42. So I think at least from the 42 perspective, we really want to help ensure that, the work that we do is promoting an ecosystem. I think Rohit talked, summarized it very nicely in terms of what the issues are if we start to see fragmentation. And so within that vein, we of course welcome, working with whoever ITU picks. So.
Very good. Moving on to voice AI. Here is a question about an event that's taking place October 10th through 12th in Arlington, Virginia. It's called www.voicesummit.ai. And the question is, are any of you participating in the Voice Summit.ai? And is this an area that relates to your AI standards work, standardization of the things related to speech to text and so forth?
So I'm not participating, but I can certainly speak to the importance of an event like that, because a lot of the core technologies in AI and applications have a layer which does use both speech recognition, voice recognition, natural language processing. So it is a foundational element that is used, as you get data sources which are both recorded, also written. And so it's a very key component of AI technology. And certainly, as a horizontal group, we delve into those horizontal components, and for example, in terminology and others. But the voice applications have very specific privacy considerations and a whole set of applications that come from various domains, right? The medical transcripting voice application, and that's where Wild's kind of approach in terms of this horizontal ecosystem approach to a standardization, where irrespective of application, there is a set of horizontal standards, and then, for example, a medical transcription, and just relaying this to like the risk framework, right? The level of risk and associated challenges, and if there is an error, what is the impact, is higher in that application versus something that is transcribing it and reading it out to a disabled person, right? If an error happens in medical transcription, it is more challenging versus an error in reading out some document to a disabled person. And that's where things like the risk management framework that look at the benefits and the impact come in, what Elham described. So personally, I'm not participating in it, but I certainly think it's a great idea to have these forums.
Personally, my my request for the artificial intelligence standardization in voice AI would be to have a standardized way of switching from language to language. If you're speaking, switching from English to Ukrainian to Spanish, could there be a standardized way to, because it's sometimes, quite funny when you're in the wrong language mode to see it trying to interpret your speech. And if there were a standard way of doing that, I think it would be great if that were embraced across, whether you're talking to the Amazon one who shall not be named because it will start going off everywhere, or the Apple one or the Google one. That would be my request.
I'm waiting for the Star Trek Universal Translator that could just be,
Yes. Okay. Here's another question. And if you have questions for one another, I know that you see each other at all of the usual places, but it's sometimes quite busy to find all the time to align in certain areas. You're welcome to give questions to one another as well. But this is about, on the topic of duplication of work, could ISO and other SDOs commit to a standard way of reporting standards development metadata in a machine accessible format so that activity is easier to track. So I think that's a great idea. You know, we spoke to the problem of the chaotic standards system worldwide, and maybe that is a step in the right direction if there is a standardized way. I know that our valued partners at ANSI do some of this work. There is periodic reporting from ANSI about all of the new work that's been proposed, and so the American SDOs have the great benefit of the support of ANSI. And thank you, by the way, to our friends from ANSI, not just Heather, but Liliana and others, Bob Rosati, who helped to spread the word about not just this roundtable, but our other roundtables. What do you think of standardized metadata for standards work? Could that be something that AI parses for us and goes out and finds and scrapes together?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rohit.
Go ahead, Wild, please.
I don't know. I mean, you know, I don't know what the to me, I think more, at least when we have these emerging areas, it's more around the coordination of you know, the projects and who's doing what, right, as opposed to just the information exchange. But I think the information exchange and how you get, there's a tremendous amount of information to the question, to the questioner's point, right, that comes across. So I don't know if it's a metadata issue or not. I think in the early stages, it's more about, you know, making sure that, you know, we don't duplicate a project, let's say on terminology in another area. And then I think where something like this forum, for example, is extremely helpful is you have people that are really, you know, working in deep in the field of, you know, like, for instance, as we heard, translating how to make sure that something's going to be responsible into a risk management framework that's technical, right? But what's difficult is getting that message across to people in different domains that may either use different acronyms for the same thing, or are in different circles. They don't necessarily look for IT to define it. So I think that part of it, the getting our information out, you know, these types of workshops, I think are just as helpful. And, you know, we can certainly follow up with anyone from my side, anyone that's interested in joining SC42 and wants to learn more. We can give them a more detailed information package of what we do. And then we can answer any questions of what it is that we are covering, not covering, could be covering.
Yes, by all means. Thank you for reminding folks that there's plenty of work to be done, and the work is only proliferating as we rise to the challenge and need of using artificial intelligence. Please, you're muted still, Ilham.
Yeah, I just want to put a plug-in for international standards. And standards, for example, coming from standard development organizations such as ISO. All the other different efforts are also important, but as we all know, for example, in the US, the government has to use international standards before starting developing another standard. So I mentioned, as I talked about AIRMF, we have also engaged a very broad stakeholder engagement, many different corners of the globe and disciplines, and it was part of your congressional mandate. But it's also important for us to get that content to the international standards, because international standards are really important. So we are a big fan of technically solid, scientifically valid, fit for purpose, right preserving standards, and we like to see all of this work going ahead, and we will continue our participations and hopefully even expanding our participation.
Thank you. Okay, we're down to the very last couple of minutes and the last couple of questions. This one is asking about AGI, also known as superintelligence. Do any of your risk management frameworks or standards work treat the question of artificial general intelligence as opposed to narrow intelligence applications? Well, I think you very briefly mentioned the Terminator earlier. Do you know, it's fun to snicker sometimes at these things. At the same time, artificial general intelligence and the idea that a superhuman intelligence is inevitable is, I think, something that everyone takes very seriously. And do standards touch on that?
You know, one of the things I said initially is that there are concerns of consumers and businesses which are in two categories, both real and perceived. You know, perhaps there are some that are more perceived, where, you know, machines dominating man and making decisions that perhaps they shouldn't be, like a nuclear button coming to a machine and machine going rogue. I think, you know, in the realm of possibility, technology and science could go in that direction. And but there is a lot of this is hyped perception. I mean, even a 2-year-old today, for a lot of 2 to 5-year-old, has intelligence at a very high level compared to a standard machine which is programmed. Again, not to say that you know, the future doesn't hold a Terminator and machines going rogue, but you know, I would say that it's not necessarily the emphasis of standardization work that we are working on today.
Sure. Well, they're highly unpredictable sometimes, even if they're not used as they're designed to be. And thinking about the Boeing artificial intelligence that that people were not using in the way that it was originally envisioned. But AGI, is it defined even within the frameworks, let alone setting aside the question of treating it in any way? Has it warranted its own definition?
We've had a discussion, I think it was in working group 1, about whether or not to define general, narrow, and wide intelligence. And I forget where we ended up with the document, but I think, you know, kind of going back to the to Rohit's point, is I think there's no question that, you know, it's important to make sure that, I mean, let's look at the good thing. I mean, we are so worried right now about like biases in the system that I don't think anyone's going to miss, you know, something coming as big as, you know, a rogue robot, right? I mean, it's not there. I think the bigger issue is that, you know, we take our eye off the ball, which is what is really problematic, like, you know, unintended biases in algorithms, unethical implementations. And I think, to Rohit's point, you know, one of the roles that standards can play, which is different, is to sort of bridge between, you know, what is happening at the regulatory phase, what is happening, you know, at perception, and what the technology is doing. And it's a new role, and it's an exciting role, I think, for committees dealing with emerging technologies like AI that is traditionally was not fulfilled. And I think now standards can play an important part. So, you know, my 2 cents is, you know, there's no way that we can predict or guarantee everything, but certainly, you know, to be involved in something like SC42 is not just about, you know, things that you might want to push. It may also be about things you're worried about. And certainly, you know, we have a whole group that's looking at trustworthiness and looking at any potential issues and how to mitigate them.
Yes.
If I can jump in very quickly, at least from the work that we do at NIST, it's very hard to determine or even guess when we're going to get there. Yet I think the time is now to think about you know, foundational principles for responsible development and use of AI systems, including increased transparency for understanding their limits and capabilities, including metrics and measures for validity and reliability.
That sounds like a really good thought for us to wrap it up on the foundational principles, including transparency, and as we sometimes talk about the reduction of the asymmetry in awareness of the technology between the users and the designers or providers of the tech. That's one of the foundations of trust. So we want to be thankful, respectful of all of your time. We thank you so much for participating in the roundtable today. Someone was asking how they can sign up, where they can join. Lynn Barra is handling all the registrations at insights.org. And her email, I've typed it in the chat. If you want to sign up, she can register you. Barra, LBARRA @itic.org is her email address. But thank you all. Thank you to our audience. Have a wonderful weekend, and Wael, may the force be with you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
David. Thanks, everybody.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for good conversations. Great weekend.